Guest, she wears many hats. She's an attorney, an author, several other things, but the thing that I'm going to talk with her about is her role as a parenting coordinator. And many of our clients are forced to go into parenting coordination because we want to keep them out of court. And I know the topic of today is how to disarm and diffuse conflict. And I thought that she would be a great person to talk to about it because this has been her career for decades. Let me just see where she is. I don't see her yet. But her name is Nicole Sodoma, and we just met and had a lovely conversation. And I know that when she gets in here, she's going to be anxious to talk about some of the common mistakes that people make with parenting coordinators. We have a number of clients who unfortunately have bad parenting coordinators and do not understand why these parenting coordinators are making the decisions that they are. So hopefully Nicole will help us learn, but I don't see her here. Yeah, there she is. Okay, great. All right, Nicole, I see you. So let me get you on here and let's do how we do things wrong when we enter parenting coordination and what we can do better. So first of all, like what can you tell us what is a parenting coordinator and how does it connect to reducing the level of conflict outside of court?
Okay, a parenting coordinator is a person that's appointed by the court and or by the parties. Not all states have them, but in essence, they act as a neutral and they have the power to make temporary, non-altering decisions. So not big decisions, but smaller decisions that it might take you much longer to get into the courtroom for the court to decide. They're involved when there are high conflict cases, communication issues. Both parties usually will share in the expense of the parenting coordinator unless it seems obvious that that's not the case. But ideally, they're teaching the parties how to more effectively communicate, to reduce conflict so that you don't end up in the courtroom. If you understand how to use a parenting coordinator, they're great to have.
Yeah. So thanks for that definition. And we always make sure when we work with clients who are at the beginning of divorce and putting a parenting plan together that they have what we call guardrails in there, like a parenting coordinator or mediation or arbitration to avoid litigation if at all possible. So Nicole, why don't you now officially introduce yourself and then we'll jump into this topic.
Yes, my name is Nicole Sodoma. I'm an attorney. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a law firm that is, we have 7 locations across the Carolinas. We are known for family law. I started the law firm 18 years ago and I've been practicing almost 26. This is my area. I'm also a parenting coordinator and have been, I think, since 2005, 2006. And interestingly, I have had to hire a parenting coordinator. Well, not one, but 3 in my own case after I was separated in 2019.
Wow. All right. So I don't know if actually, before you tell us more about that, if you want to,
Yes.
what is I mean, I know what a high conflict divorce is, but what is a high conflict divorce? Because we know at the beginning, everything looks like a high conflict divorce, generally, unless it's amicable. So how do you know if you're in a high conflict or heading for one?
Well, I printed this before we started because, our statute in North Carolina, actually, we have a parenting coordinator statute. And I pulled the actual definition because, I'm a lawyer and that's where we start.
Yeah.
And so a high conflict case is what you have to prove before you can appoint a parenting coordinator. And it describes parents who demonstrate an ongoing pattern of, are you ready?
Mhm.
Excessive litigation, anger and distrust, verbal abuse, physical aggression or threats of physical aggression, difficulty communicating and cooperating in the care of minor children. And F is this last one is like the catch-all conditions that, in the discretion of the court, warrant the appointment of a parenting coordinator. Lawyers always like those catch-all phrases at the end, just to make sure that if nothing else applies, we can get it in that one. So, so high conflict, excessive litigation, distrust, things that are ultimately impacting the children that the court doesn't think the parents are going to be able to do on their own successfully.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the questions that we had recently was someone said, do you know immediately if it's a high conflict, like who's the high conflict person? Let's say a couple is referred to you as a parenting coordinator. Are you able to tell right away?
Gosh, that would suggest that there's some bias, like immediately out of the gate.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, usually you have an instinct as to who is going to be the one that is always pointing a finger.
Hmm.
So, every parenting coordinator is going to be different. So
Hmm.
you've got parenting coordinators who are lawyers, you have to meet a certain criteria in order to be a parenting coordinator. And so parenting coordinators are mental health professionals or family law lawyers. There are most of them are that. And so that often determines how the parenting coordinator is going to view the case. A lot of times people will choose lawyers because they want somebody hard,
Hmm.
that's like not going to spend a lot of time going back and forth on the issues. They just want to see it clearly and move forward.
Hmm.
Whereas a mental health professional might want to dive a little bit more into why you're responding, why you're making the decision you're making, and how that you can come to some sort of common ground.
Yeah. Do parenting coordinate? I know mediators sometimes talk with children or think about the child's development in the process. Do parenting coordinators ever talk to kids?
It depends on the parenting coordinator, the age of the child. There might be a provision in the order or agreement about it, but talking to collateral sources is
Hmm.
often something that I like to parenting coordinators to see, because otherwise you're absorbing everything from the parent. And that's self-reporting, and you do need to validate. So as a parenting coordinator, I've been to a school, I've talked to a counselor, I have gone and met children. I've gone to an exchange place
Hmm.
and not participated in the exchange, but I wanted to observe the exchange and how the child reacted at the exchange and why they felt like it needed to be at this public place. So, lots of different opportunities to observe if you don't want to speak with the children directly.
So it's interesting because what you're describing is now making me think of a guardian ad litem, like during a
Mhm.
custody evaluation. Could you say what's the difference between a parenting coordinator and a guardian ad litem or a custody evaluator?
Guardian ad litem is going to represent the child as I want you to think of it more as like the standard is the same. We're using this best interest standard, and so but a parenting coordinator has no confidentiality with either party. They
Mhm.
are a complete neutral. Whereas a guardian litem, when they show up in a courtroom, they are advocating on behalf of the child. They are talking to the child. That's a very different experience from a client perspective, and payment on how a guardian ad litem is paid and the circumstances of the case.
Yeah. So you mentioned your own situation with three different parenting coordinators. Do you want to share a little bit about how that happened? And were any of those parenting coordinators decision makers, PCDMs?
That's interesting because I've never heard PCDM, so that's great.
Mhm.
We in most of our orders that we see, my experience is that a PC always has the ability to be that temporary decision maker unless the parties have agreed otherwise. But you always can, and I'll put the word appeal in
Mhm.
quotes, to your trial judge, to your district, whatever your court is, if you don't like the decision. And you should, depending on how your rule is written, have quicker access to the courtroom than if you were to just schedule a motion or a hearing. So, so yes, in my own case, I'm a mom of three, and you know, uh, just like anyone else, the people we marry are not the people we divorce. I never expected to have a high conflict situation. I feel very strongly about love your children more than you dislike the other party, but it takes two people to feel that way. And just because you feel that way doesn't mean that's what's going to come out in behavior. And so, and people respond to that separation and divorce differently, and personalities are different, and how you respond, and people accept circumstances differently. So, I wasn't expecting to have three different parenting coordinators, but the first one we picked was a lawyer. We thought that she would be, hard and fast. I'll say I thought she would be hard and fast, direct, and because of her litigation schedule, because of timing, there were lots of delays, and so we went on to parenting coordinator 2, which was a therapist, and then
Mhm.
we went on to parenting coordinator 3, which was another therapist.
Wait,
So
why? I would think a therapist might be better, especially when there's
yes.
kids involved.
Yes, and yeah, you would think that you have to want, as a parenting coordinator, your perspective is both parties have to want change.
Mhm.
Both parties, and just like in a intact family, right? It takes two people. I always say it takes two people to say I do and one to say I don't. It only takes one party to not communicate effectively, to not want to co-parent, to not want to parallel parent. And if you can't get both those parties on the same page on the issues, then the parenting coordinator won't feel effective and has the right to withdraw,
Mhm.
has the right to ask to be removed because they can't make any progress because one or both parties isn't making that happen. And
Mhm.
so that's why we ultimately went to the third parenting coordinator. And then then you have to make some choices because parenting coordinators, um, how often your work with a parenting coordinator, how both parties feel about the parenting coordinator, what decisions are being put in front of the parenting coordinator to make. And so we just got to the point where we thought it was best, and I believe we agreed to no longer have a parenting coordinator. Now, I love the guardrails that you talked about. Guardrails are so important, even without a parenting coordinator. If you have an order that says we have joint legal custody and we're going to make decisions together, but what you do in the event of an impasse is so important, whether
Not if,
it's
when.
yes, when there is an impasse, and on what there, like, and what the impasse is over is so important. So if it's over a school selection and it's June and you have to make that decision by the end of July, well, and your kids are in, elementary or high school, like that's a big decision, and likely to be impacted by joint legal custody. Who makes the decision? And so if you disagree, having someone available to help make that decision is really critical. Like, it'll
Right.
drive you
You're never
crazy.
going to get to court and be heard and done by the time school starts if it's already June.
Well, and it's not, the court likely won't be able to make the decision on which school, which
Right.
is what parents want to put in front of the court. They want to say this school is better because of this, and this school is, the ratings are not as good. But
Mhm.
instead, the court has to make the decision on who makes the decision,
Yeah.
not which school is better for the child.
Yeah. Thanks
So
for explaining that because a lot of time that's happened to several of our clients. They're like, why wouldn't the court decide? And my guess is because it's your family. They don't want to make that decision.
yes, I mean, I've had judges go to the school to observe where there was a child that had special needs, but ultimately it is who has the legal decision-making authority on that issue.
Hmm.
And so, really being careful on how your orders are drafted, how your agreements are drafted with respect to issues. I mean, we've had orders where one parent has because one parent was more of an academia and more involved on academics, they made the decision on academics.
Hmm.
The other parent made the decision on medical. Like, maybe that's what works for your family. I mean, it's one of the best things about family law is there are no two families that are alike. Like we might all have some common ground on the topics or the issues, but ultimately none of us are the same.
Yeah. So, and as you're talking about the things like for legal decision making in most of the world, it's four general ones: education, medical, extracurricular, and religion.
Yes.
But now technology and all of that, it's not considered, as far as I know, like a legal decision, but more people are putting that, and we encourage them to put that in your parenting plan because it's such a big deal that nobody really thought about in the past.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Yep.
it is such a big deal. It is, I mean, in this age, and also so hard to monitor and enforce.
Yeah.
And I experienced this, personally too, in that, if one family has the Apple account, if you're an Apple user, right? If you're, you can't both access it, or you're going to share credit cards. You literally have to share passwords and devices. And depending on the age of your kids, you've got some, both parents might not agree on values
Mhm.
of privacy. And, if you're in the situation where you have a high conflict situation and you don't trust the other person, like it's going to be at issue. So having those guardrails, understanding, I mean, if somebody's got some great software out there or an app that they like, I would love to know about it because,
Mhm.
the resources change all the time. And devices and access to apps and what's age appropriate is really tough.
Yeah.
Our kids
Yeah.
are getting smarter than we are.
I know. They're seeing a lot more than we did when we were their ages.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us some mistakes, because you said you have a long laundry list of mistakes that people make, and I can't wait to hear them, and probably they'll resonate with many of our clients.
I'm going to I'm going to give you my laundry list that
Okay.
I've experienced, that I've advised on as a parenting coordinator, as a parent. One of them is over communicating. So and I'm guilty of it too, because over communicating, like I'm a lawyer, I like to make sure that I'm communicating efficiently and laying everything out. And one of the things that you can do is, I mean, in the days of, now we have chat and we can say, can you narrow this down to the important points? But, you can communicate effectively without writing paragraphs after paragraphs over the topic, without including your opinion. Keeping it straight to the facts, because it's really easy to want to over communicate, but it ends up leading to more arguments, more disagreements, more explanation, and it's just better to keep it short and to the point.
Yeah,
And
we
yeah,
talked
and
about
sometimes,
Bill Eddy a little bit.
yes, talking about Bill Eddy. And so the other piece is, I was thinking about Bill, and we were talking about it, and I found Bill Eddy's book on my bookshelf. I hand this out on a regular basis because it's not people who don't understand high conflict personalities who tend to have higher conflict cases because they don't know how to respond in that circumstance. They think, oh, wait, it sounds like that person's being reasonable today, so I'll let my guard down and I will share exactly how I'm feeling. And then up pops the high conflict again. And so that's really important to understand, that that might happen uh, without you even realizing that it's happening. So understanding what the personality is of the person that you're communicating with, it is such a pitfall. It's so easy to fall into that place. So that's my second one.
Yeah. So
Um,
pause for 1 second. So you're
yes,
talking about the importance of not over communicating. I
yes,
don't think I told you this, but we do what we call strategic communication more than anything with everyone. And we have a course. It's called
love
How
that.
to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind, because we find that the communication is what creates more trauma. Like bless you, post-separation trauma from getting that ding, the notifications like, oh no, what fresh hell is this? And so really understanding how to communicate properly is so important. And when you talked about over communicating and offering an opinion, that's something we say you never offer an opinion unless you want them to do the opposite. Because offering
Yes.
an opinion is signaling something that you want. They don't want you to have
Yes.
anything that you want. They don't care about what you think. And they see it as that you're trying to control them by offering an opinion. So
Even
being
if they're
aware,
not.
right,
Yes.
of course not.
So reacting emotionally over, strategically is another one that I have on my list of things. And I will even catch myself saying, today I'm going to be emotional. I know I'm going to be emotional. I'm going to respond this way. And that's okay too. But
Yeah.
just know what you're doing. Like, recognize that is going to be a mistake. You are not going to feel good. So maybe you send it to yourself. Maybe you write it in your journal, and then you know that I'm not going to send this. This is not going to be effective. But it is a mistake people make. They respond emotionally instead of strategically.
Yeah,
So
we
it
call it
goes right
knee
along
jerk.
those ways.
We call it the knee jerk response. We call it popping off, and we call it exhibit A, that you don't want to end up in the
Yes.
courtroom.
Yes. Another one that I have is, you want to, this is also in intact families, traditional families, intact, with choosing to win over resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want so much to win on your point that you're willing to argue about it, but that's not what you're trying. What you need to be accomplishing is a resolution. It's not about win or losing. It's not about winning or losing. It's about resolution. And so often, one of the mistakes people make is they want to just win on the issue so they can feel validated with their position, but it's a mistake.
Right. And the blaming and accusing usually doesn't work with a difficult ex, because that's focusing on the past, and we want resolution. Like, what are we going to do moving forward? How can we fix this? How can we work it out? How can we work together?
Another one I would say is people who fail to recognize the impact on your kids. And I'm not just talking about like the most obvious thing, like, you don't use your kids to communicate for you. There are adult things that need to be discussed between the adults, and kid things that need to be discussed with, that are not part of this equation. So what I want parents to remember is that the impact on the children, it might not be apparent to you. So often people will say, oh, my kid's old enough to understand. No, like, even if that is what you're thinking, they are impacted. And it might not be that, well, I don't say anything disparaging about the other parent. But the fact that you don't look at the other parent, the fact that you don't communicate effectively with the other parent, the fact that, maybe if it goes so far as the fact that the other parent doesn't go to your birthday party as a kid, like, that impacts the child. It means that your emotions as the parent are bigger than like, it could be that your emotions are bigger than for your what do I always say, you must love your children more than you hate your ex. Those behaviors impact the child. So no, you're not saying anything negative about the parent, but the behaviors that you exhibit, that they're seeing, maybe the children are going to mirror those behaviors. Maybe they're going to internalize them, but one way or another, it's going to impact your children and
Yeah.
how they see you and how they see the other parent. And I think that's a big mistake that parents make.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me throw one at you that we got recently that comes up a lot, in terms of communicating, where a parent tells a 12-year-old, why don't you ask mom to let me take you on vacation, even though the agreement is not that, and there's all kinds of reasons why. Let me take you on a few extra days of vacation. And then the kid comes and asks the parent, like, why don't you let us go on vacation with dad, like these extra few days? And then when the mom says, well, we have this agreement and there's a reason why. And then the kid goes back to the other parent who says, oh, she just doesn't want you to enjoy your time with me. It should be up to you.
It's no good. Well, and then a lot of times in these high conflict cases, one parent will change the rules along the way, right? So there's a case where one parent says, the kids are old enough to make their own decisions, let them decide. But then when it's not going the way that they want, you might find that that same parent says, oh, well, the order or our agreement says this, we have to do this. So it can be really like that's very typical behavior in a high conflict case. It's frustrating for one parent, but it's also frustrating for the other parent. So, and the older the kids get, a lot of times the harder it is, especially when they become driving age.
Hmm.
So, and the way your kids are perceiving that, it may be that because of those behaviors, they think that's what dad's thinking. They think that's what mom's thinking because they see this big picture. They see all those behaviors and they're going to have their own reality of those events. So it may be that that's not the intention of either parent, but you know, back to the impact on the child is so important to recognize in a high conflict case. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said about people saying, well, I don't disparage the other parent. We often talk about something called the 738-55% rule, and that's that people only really listen to 7% of your words. 38% is your tone, and 55% is your body language. So there's
ooh,
so much the way that when you're speaking about your ex or to your ex in front of your kids, they're not paying attention to what you're saying or not saying. They're looking at your face. They see your expressions. We
738,
Yeah,
55.
yeah. We were saying
So
that
good.
you shouldn't even discuss when you're in the midst of, well, it's not usually in the midst, it's just an ongoing conflict with your ex. You shouldn't even discuss something, let's say at a child's birthday party, if you're in eye shot. Even if they can't hear you, they know who you're talking about from your body language. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes. I mean, I really would. I love this 738-55 rule. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah,
738-55?
yeah.
I'm
I
going
got
to
it.
need to
I
write
got it
those
from
numbers down.
Chris Voss, who was a former
Oh,
FBI
yes.
terrorist negotiator. Yeah,
Yes, that's good.
yeah.
Our kids are so much smarter than we think they are. They feel it. So, and that it reminds me of one of my other notes. There's so many times that I will see a client, a friend, a colleague post something super inappropriate on social media,
Uh-huh.
and it feels so good in that moment. And I will send a quick message. Hey, take that down. You're
Mhm.
not going to just go ahead and take it down. I know it felt good to hit post or story or whatever it is, but it's not worth it. And so that's another mistake that parents make. And if they don't have somebody in their life to tell them, that is not going to be a great post. Your kids are going to see it. Your ex is going to see it. Somebody's friend is going to see it, and it's going to be their story. And the hard thing about that too is um, that it's you want to share your story to some degree is what I find with parents. um, and I wrote a book. I mean, when I was so surprised that there were so many things about my own case that after 20 years of practicing family law that my clients had not told me, and that I wanted to tell my clients
Mhm.
now because I didn't know. And so there's so many things that you want to fill the gaps on. You want to tell a story, because the reality is if you're not telling a story, people are creating their own narrative. They're creating whatever they think the story is. And so I understand the need to want to post and to share whatever that story is, because you want to fill in the gaps for other people. You want to, feel validated. You want to share how you're feeling. That should be a forum you can do it for a lot of people. But the reality is it's not worth it most of the time. So it's
Yeah,
a mistake people make.
I know. We often hear attorneys say, think about yourself explaining this to a judge. Would you be comfortable showing this post to a judge, considering that with our clients, they're in court all the time?
Yes.
So that's something to think about. And the other thing is we hear people saying, but my kids are not my friends on social media, so they're never going to see it. But it's not just that your kid's not going to see it. It's that the parents of your kids' friends might see it, and they might communicate things to your kids' friends. And so things could end up back to your kids. And it does look like a form of disparagement when you make posts like that. So it's very, I know the same thing, like people want to post, but you're jeopardizing yourself legally and also your kids' emotional health.
Yes. And I mean, even if your kids know your password on your phone, If your kids are old enough, I mean, a lot of people share their passwords on their phones with their kids. Grab my phone and go pay the person at the Harris Teeter, the grocery store, whatever your grocery store is, because
Mhm.
your card's on your phone. Like, there are just so many opportunities where those things can happen. It makes sense not to do those things, to avoid the possibility.
Yeah.
So yes, a couple of tips on litigation, and I know you've got tons of rules on this, but I actually just left a meeting where we talked about how some parents are really good documenters. So, so often in high conflict cases, there are patterns. So it might not just be this one thing. We see this in domestic violence cases too. It's not just this one thing, it's this pattern over time that exists. Because if you were to cherry pick one email, one text message, and use just that, that's very different than the string of text messages, the history. And so, really being sure to document that pattern and make it as easy to read. You have a limited amount of time. If you're going to be in the courtroom or if you're working with a parenting coordinator, you really have a limited amount of time to communicate what's happening. And so the more organized and streamlined you are, so it will feel like organized chaos, and it sometimes feels like a full-time job, but really being able to document the pattern and communicating it efficiently is a really solid tip, that people should start early instead of having to go back and scour through text messages. And even if they don't intend to do anything with the information, having it there at least for some period of time so that it can be clear what the hostility is, what the conflict is, and what that pattern of behavior is.
Yeah, we obviously teach that too. We call it targeted documentation, but we talk about also to think about the visible impact on your child and
Yes.
relationship with your child. Like, how does all this connect? And picking out certain themes, not just they did this and they did this and then this happened. It's like we got to focus on the custody factors or best interest factors, as well as what we call the alienation factors. Is like if your
Right.
ex is undermining your relationship with your child, there's a series of things you need to know in terms of documentation, not just document everything for everything, because that's going to cost tons of money. Like you said, there's no time. We often say it's like you're paying $8 million for a 30-second Super Bowl commercial. That's more court than parenting coordinator, but like,
Yes.
you got to be tight. Like, you got to be able to yourself communicate effectively, not just with your ex, but to professionals like a parenting coordinator. It's almost like preparing for a test or something with school. You know,
You
you
know,
got to be ready.
but it's almost like, and I have so much compassion and empathy, it's almost like you're living a double life.
Yeah.
Because, and I saw this great post on Instagram just a couple of days ago, and it was like this parent sitting at a soccer game drinking coffee, but the content was, about the fact that she had just received emotion, and that it says she's this terrible parent, but and that no one else, everyone else around her is talking about the end of year party. And
Mm,
I can't remember what all the content was, but every time you pick up your email or whatever, app you're using to communicate, whatever it is, you have to get back on your game,
yeah.
really. In a high conflict case, you're never off your game, because you never know when you can, uh, you know, let your guard down. You do feel like you're documenting at all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even with phone calls, you'll be tempted to record phone calls because you know that it's always going to be that person's word against your word. And if it's not in writing, I mean, it can really be overwhelming. So, avoiding that courtroom, working with parenting coordinators, recognizing the mistakes that people make and learning from them so that you can get on the other side.
Yeah. So speaking of recordings, that's something that we've not in terms of recording phone calls, but we've heard from a number of professionals that if you are recording during exchanges, that you can be perceived as a high conflict person. If you're
Mm,
doing it a lot, we're like, because it's making the kids aware, like, this is
you're
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. isn't this weird? Why is
Yeah.
mom or dad always recording our exchanges?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's I think that's right. I think you might be perceived like the high conflict parent, even if your intentions are not that, even if your intentions are, I just want to be safe, or if there's been domestic violence, or, I tell my clients, if you think that the other person has a temper and is going to react emotionally to whatever it is you say, to let them know I'm recording this.
Hmm.
And most of the time, they act crazier when they know you're recording. I mean, it does the opposite. So, I have judges that say, if this is how you act, knowing that you're going to be in my courtroom, I can't imagine how you act when you don't know you're going to be in my courtroom. I mean, the word, I always hear the word charming. I
Hmm.
don't know why that is a word that comes up all the time in this practice area. It's amazing that when you are dealing with, when you have a high conflict case, one person will always describe the other person as charming
Mm.
in the courtroom. So really going back to making sure you're documenting the patterns. I know recording is can be perceived as high conflict. There are ways to record that don't involve your children. Your children don't need to know that you're recording. You know, recognizing what's age appropriate. Work with a professional, let them know, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I feel like I need to record this because I don't know how to document it. And maybe it's just audio. Maybe you just have your phone on an voice memo and you put it in your pocket, and that makes you feel like you could document it that way. But, there's so many benefits from working with professionals who can teach you the right thing to do for your kids, age appropriate based on your circumstances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean,
a
in
lot
my
of high
mind, it's like,
conflict parents refuse that professional support, and it drives me nuts.
yeah, yeah. But it's good to get someone who is high conflict, doesn't realize they are, and help them learn to lower the conflict without even labeling them. So that's always very satisfying. Um,
Yes, so,
yeah.
so good.
So tell us some ideas. We talked about mistakes that people make, especially when it comes to parenting coordination, communication, and increasing the level of conflict. What are some things that people should be doing better, like some practical tips that they can do today, even?
One of the things that I've been doing for, I mean, more than a decade, regardless of whether you're in high conflict or not, I love when parties share an email address for the children.
Wow.
So I know it seems like it could be impossible, but it is both parties have access to the same email account. You use it for school coaches, your doctors, the doctor's appointments for the kids. What it does is it eliminates that extra step of communication. And if somebody changes the password, it's really clear. Like, it's easy to show who changed the password, but the rules are, we're going to have this joint email. It's going to have, you can have it, you can use that calendar. And so I love this idea. I've tried it. I have a lot of clients who use it, and it is effective. So, and I think schools, there was a time when I was advising my clients, when you go to the school, make sure you leave envelopes with both parties, one addressed to mom, one addressed to dad, stamped envelopes.
Oh, I
And
love this.
so, make it really easy. Be the parent that makes it easy. You're not the only family that probably has high conflict. And,
Hmm.
think about like preschool age children, they've got artwork. They've got, signups, or might be in on a bulletin board, and one parent isn't doing the picking up every day. And so
Hmm.
they're going to miss that opportunity. So handing the resources to the teachers, to the administration, whether that's a joint email account or in hard copy, envelopes, stamps, your address. If you could just, on occasion, send me half of what you have, or let me know. I'm just trying to make it really easy for you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I've never heard that before.
Oh, yes,
That's a
yes.
great idea.
I love it
Brilliant.
too.
Yeah.
Rules about social media, I think, are really important. I think they're hard to enforce.
Hmm.
I think the older your kids are, the harder it is to enforce. And figuring out what those are up front, having some sort of approval process, what that looks like. I do think that's really important. I think it's going to be more important
Hmm.
as our kids start using AI.
Hmm.
Kids can be manipulative.
Yeah.
And so, from a practical standpoint, that is something that I think is one of the hardest things to navigate in high conflict custody cases because it is hard to make rules around it. And
Yeah.
you and your kids don't understand and so maybe it's an age parameter, like you can't have Snapchat until you're 13. That's
Hmm.
really easy. But are they on Snapchat on the web? Did they get an account and you don't know about it? I mentioned that earlier. It's a practical problem.
Yeah.
And so, you really want to say, like, this person's responsible for it, but you just don't have great rules and opportunities to make that happen. And so that just to me is just one of those things that both parents have to recognize that it's going to be practically impossible,
Hmm.
but doable. And you have to work together on it.
Yeah. Again, I'm thinking parenting plan.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, even in a parenting plan, it's really hard
Yeah.
because kids can, you can have one parent who has control, like if you're using Apple devices, you can have one parent who has control, but you can't have two parents that have control. Apple
Yeah.
won't let you do that. It's, the owner of the account, the parent account, is going to be one account.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it a joint account, but who's going to put their credit card down?
Right. Right. Yeah.
You
So
know?
all these things to consider sooner rather than later for sure.
Yes. And I also like to think, for the third, if I had a third one,
Hmm.
recognizing, not just the here and now, like recognizing that there is, I want your lawyer and your parenting coordinator to be thinking about the possibility of you in a blended family, thinking about you in the possibility of how that would impact, what that change is going to look like, and what could we be doing now that will make all of that easier.
That's great. Oh my gosh, this is so helpful. Well, thank you. I can't believe time just flew. Thank you so much, Nicole. How can people find you?
Nicole Sodoma is my handle on, or do we still say handles? Do we
Yeah,
say handles?
I
It's
do.
it's it's Nicole Sodoma everywhere, on all the platforms. I feel like I'm a little late on Instagram because I'm the Facebook generation. So, but in both places, and of course, LinkedIn. I'm still learning chat, but we tried out TikTok this year. So easy to find me.
Yeah.
The book is still around. It's called Please Don't Say You're Sorry. I narrated it myself for Audible, and I get lots of great feedback on that because it does have some hard questions at the end of each chapter. I am a marriage loving divorce attorney. I still believe that people can make that work. And so the book is, marriage, separation, and divorce, and all of those stages. And it's a easy read with lots of good tips and things to be thinking about in the interim when you make these life-changing decisions.
Yeah.
So easy to find. Enjoyed spending time with you. Thank you for having me on.
No, my pleasure. Now I have new tips. I'm like, ooh, I've never heard some of the ones you mentioned. So thank you so much, Nicole.
Well,
Thanks
I'm
for
sure
taking
you'll
the
see
time.
my 73855
Yeah.
to you.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's not
Okay.
make this the last conversation.
Um, okay. Thank you. Yes, I agree. Sorry, I just had one of my kids send me a text message. See you in real time. We're always wearing multiple hats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to speak again.
Yes. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.